Were you over and seeing Rambam the other night?
Yeah. I was
One of the
not.
speakers happened to be my brother.
Really?
Yes.
I missed it.
You missed it.
Yeah.
Why'd you miss it?
Was it on one moment? Yes.
Wednesday night.
That's how I missed it.
Why?
That was in New Jersey.
You were in New Jersey, okay. Can't be two places at once?
Yeah. I missed it. I believe you. You won't be able to do it. I'm sure Jeff will be able to do multiple businesses. No better than yours.
Okay, I don't know if you have the copies, but I gave it out again.
Actually, you know what? It could be now.
Let me look.
Oh, it's fine.
These are old copies, but some of them are. Oh, and then there's also,
We're ready, right?
so we were up to Gemara that discusses the importance of not embarrassing a person in public. And it's called in Hebrew, shfichat damim, the spilling of blood. Thank you very much. We asked the question, why would it be called shvichas damim, spilling of blood? You're spilling the person whom you embarrassed in public. So that person turns white, blood spills internally, it's tantamount to murder. Okay, so it's to say shvichas dam. So I gave the answer in the class 2 weeks, last week, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, that when the person reminds himself or herself how she got embarrassed, she gets embarrassed again. But Malka Labana gave a better answer.
Nice.
And it's inspiring to see how innovative this answer is. When you publicize a person in public, there has to be other people around, watching, observing. A normal person, a good person, I'm sure she's that's why she came up with this, gets hurt and gets embarrassed to see someone else getting embarrassed. So you're not just embarrassing the person, you're embarrassing all the bystanders also, making them feel horrible. If you're a decent person, feeling horrible that this person is being mortified in public. So in a way, you're embarrassing all the bystanders too. That's Malka's answer. I like it better than my answer.
Oh, thank you. All right, should we switch places? I'll teach class.
No problem.
All right.
I'm very tired today, so I wouldn't mind to switch places anyways. Okay. What's the taich? What is the meaning of, you speaking Yiddish, what is the meaning of embarrassing a person in public? How many people do you need for it to be public? So it says 3 people. But doesn't be not 3 people besides you and the person you're embarrassing, but including that person. So all it has to, just one more person has to be there. You, the person you embarrassed, and a bystander. And that's called the Rabbi already. How detrimental is it? How severe is it to hurt somebody, to embarrass somebody in public? Now, embarrassing a person in private is also a problem, but you don't lose your Olam Haba. When do you use your Olam Haba? If you have a regular routine, you're routinish in embarrassing people in public. It's like nothing to you. A one-time thing will not cause you to lose your Olam Haba, but if it's done on a constant basis, one loses one's Olam Haba. How do we know this? Where do we learn this from? Anyone know? Where do we learn this idea that it's so terribly serious to hurt somebody in public? Story in Chumash with
Miriam and Moshe.
Miriam and Moshe. What's the story with Miriam and Moshe?
Miriam got leprosy and she embarrassed or second guessed Moshe.
Got embarrassed. She got hit with leprosy. Didn't get embarrassed. I mean,
I think she spoke about Moshe.
it's in Breishis, Chumash Breishis, if you're interested to know exactly where it is in Parshas Vayeshev.
When
So it's with a woman called,
oh,
so that a very righteous woman,
actually
and her name begins with a Tav. Tamar.
smart.
Tamar. Tamar.
I was like Tamar, but it's not Tamar. So.
No, not Tamar. Tamar. Story with Tamar. You know the whole mice with Tamar and Yehuda. She wanted to have children from him, and the story goes that prostitute. She dressed as if she was a prostitute. Yehuda met her. I'm not gonna get into the details of the whole story. It's another class. And of course, she was impregnated at that one time. As a result, Yehuda had no idea that this was his daughter-in-law. And when they found out that she was pregnant, he called her a zona, and he believed that she was liable to a death penalty, and she was being carried out to execution. And what happened? She said she had the various different, items that he gave her as proof. And instead of saying it's you that I became pregnant from, she didn't say that. She just sent a message. Tell him that the person that owns these things are the people is the person that I am pregnant from. And Yehuda realized it's from him, and of course, but she could have easily just said that, She let it in the ball, in other words, it was in his ball, the ball was in his field, in his court. If he wanted to, he could have denied it. She could have confronted him and said openly and embarrassed him and said, what are you talking about? You're the one who impregnated me. She didn't do that. And thus we learn that it's worthwhile to put yourself in danger, to have yourself executed rather than cause an embarrassment to someone else. And this is a person who's his fault, but still, she felt that it's not right to embarrass someone, even if that somebody is about to kill me. This is the story with Tamar. You might want to ask a question and throw a monkey wrench on the whole proof. How do we know that embarrassing someone in public, even if you had nothing to do with that person being embarrassed, you're not the fault? How do we know that even in such a case, you're supposed to endanger your life? In Tamar's case, it was her fault. She started the whole process. She is the one that caused her pregnancy. So she is a little bit to blame for his embarrassment. It's not that he got embarrassed and she has nothing to do with it. How do you know, even if you have nothing to do with that person's embarrassment, and yet it's worthwhile to throw yourself into a furnace of fire to avoid that? That we can't learn from the story. Only we can learn that if you have some kind of, partnership in that person's embarrassment and you want to save yourself from Tamar, we learned that you shouldn't. Now, before we get to the Gemara inside, what I wanted to say is, does that mean, literally, does this really mean that it's mamish like murder? Are you allowed to, to save a life, you're allowed to desecrate the Shabbos? Would you be allowed to desecrate the Shabbos to avoid embarrassment? If it's tantamount to murder, killing, would you be allowed to desecrate the Shabbos to avoid your own or someone else's embarrassment? Come up with a scenario where if you were to be Mechal Shabbos, you would avoid, figure out yourself what the scenario would be. Would you be allowed to desecrate the Shabbos in order to save one from embarrassment, which is tantamount to murder? We don't go that far. Well, obviously, we're not going to go that far to compare to murder to that degree. And even from Tamar's case, many of the Rishonim, the early commentators, maintain that it doesn't actually fall into the category of there are three mitzvos that we have to give our lives away: idolatry, adultery, and murder. It's not one of them. So it's not literally compared to murder. Tamar, however, acted piously. She acted beyond the letter of the law. She didn't have to do that, but just to show how severe, embarrassing someone is, she was willing to give her life away. So it's not mamish, because murder is over. A person is dead, and you can't bring the person back to life again. To embarrass someone, it's a temporary murder, so you can't really compare it. But to know that it has some kind of, it's like an offshoot of murder, that itself is scary enough. Okay, let's see the Gemara inside.
But what about
Yeah, what do you want to ask?
let's say someone leaves their phone out on the Shabbos table, on Shabbos, right?
Mhm.
And there's people around,
Yeah.
and it's not actually violating Shabbos but it's something that we don't do because it's a gather.
That's a muksa you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, first of
But
all,
if you would say to them that they left their phone, if there's, then it would embarrass them. So can you just move it?
You can move the phone without having to do anything. You're allowed to move a phone under those circumstances. If you need the place of the phone. If you happen to need the actual space where the phone is, and for sure you can move it like that, kalachayad, with your hands. So you won't have to be, it's
Yeah,
not
but
not
like,
till
right,
Shabbos.
if you do that.
I mean, you can move something a weird way if you need to use the space immediately for Shabbos.
But you're saying you don't need the
Like-
space. You're just saying, I don't need the space, but I don't want this person, why would that person be embarrassed because the phone's left on the table? It's not, it's not a severe embarrassment. Embarrassment means it's an embarrassment what Yehuda had to go through. Just imagine.
I'm saying like,
Uh,
yeah, it's a place where like everyone
No.
is like, it's at, so they might need that.
We're
space.
talking about real embarrassment, where a person is mortified. That's not the case. Okay, let's see the Gemara inside.
But if you were to need that space, you could move it like in the
Yeah,
backwards.
if you actually need the space, not that you're making up and that you pretending you need the space, but you actually have to really need that space. The only thing you can't move for that purpose, it's not a halacha class, is money, for example. Money is left on the table and you need the space, so you can't move it with your hands directly, but you can move it like that. Kalachayat it's called. You can't move
And then you could like sweep it.
muksagam, muksagam or absolute muks, you can't move directly. Indirect is a different story. So that's Hilchos Shabbos. Now we go to Gemara. Yep. So we actually, on the first page over here, we'll start with the first page. We did this 2 weeks ago, but we'll start over again. There's a lot to talk about over here. Let's see it inside. It's better than a man cohabit with a woman who is possibly another man's wife. That choice is better than the al yalbin b'nei chaveroi barabim, that he should shame his fellow in public. And we know on from where do we learn this from? Midarash Rabba, from what Rabba once expounded. Darash Rabba expounded the following halacha. My dirsi, what is the meaning of that which is written in Tillim? It's a pasuk in Tillim, Kapitel Lamed Hey. David HaMelech is complaining and bemoaning the tsaras, the constant harassment that he is suffering from his enemies. And he says the following, Uvitzali. Now, first I'll translate it simply. We did it 2 weeks ago, then we'll go to the Gemara's drasha. Uvitzali. Tsali sounds like the word soleya, limping. Yaakov, when he was fought the Malach, it says, Hu soleya al yirecho, he was limping on his side. So tsali would mean during my troubles, my ailments, I was limping, and yet they were, as they see me suffering in pain, samchu, they were rejoicing, when they gathered around. Koru, they ripped at me, they tore me apart, below damu, and they wouldn't be silent, like domem. Below damu, they didn't keep quiet, they kept on doing it, constant harassing and insulting. It was done in public. Amar David, so David says before the Eibishter, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, she'im hoyu mekarim b'sori, loy hoya domi shoset. It is well known to you that if my enemies were to tear my flesh, my blood would not flow to the ground. For it has been drained from the surface because of their taunts about my sin. They have taunted me so much, I have no life inside of me. It's as if I have no blood. No blood would run if they would cut me. My blood wouldn't come out. There would be no blood flow. And how do you learn? Where do we see that? Look in the pasuk again. Let's read the pasuk again. Uvitzali. Go back to the words of Uvitzali. What were they taunting David HaMelech about? They said that he violated the rule of marrying a woman who was still married, committing adultery. Uriah Hachiti was married to a woman called Bathsheba. He violated the rules of rebelling against the king. He was really subject to a death penalty, but David HaMelech did not want to kill him directly. Rather, he sent him in front of the battle, knowing that he probably will not make it back. And the story was that he gave his wife a get, like all soldiers do, give their wife a get, a divorce case, they don't come back alive. The woman shouldn't have any doubts, where's my husband? And she becomes an iguna. She's stuck. Iguna means a woman who's in limbo. She can't remarry because maybe her husband's still alive and she has no married life. So in order to avoid that problem, they would give their wives a get and say, this get will be a get as of now, if you don't return. If we don't see you coming back from war, then we are hereby divorced, I am free to remarry. That's what Rashi explains. So David HaMelech violated because he married this fellow, Uriah Hachiti. I'm sorry, he married Bathsheba, who was the wife of Uriah Hachiti, while she was still officially married to him, because the condition had not yet been fulfilled. He hasn't died yet. True, once he passes on, it'll be retroactive. But you can't marry someone based on something that's retroactive if you don't know the results. You don't know if he's going to die in war. So it becomes a real big issue. And they taunted David. You violated she was a Suffolk Ish. Okay, at the end, it came out clear that at the end she was really divorced from the beginning, but still, you didn't know that. Tosfos says that it was no. Tosfos over there says that he actually gave her a get, no conditions, but the get was in private and no one knew about it. So therefore, everyone claimed that she wasn't divorced, but she really was divorced. The people were talking. We don't know about any divorce. This person, she's probably still married.
Why didn't he give her a proper get?
It was a proper get.
Why did he give her a proper get?
Because he didn't want people to know
So
about her.
what did he? Why did he give her a proper
Explain, because he
get?
didn't want her to be an iguna stuck.
But
You
no.
can always remarry her later on, But he didn't want people to know about this get. So he did it in private. He did it in private, so no one knows that she's divorced. And therefore, when Uriah passes on, he'll be able to take her as a wife. He didn't want people to know her status, because if people know that she's divorced right now, they're going to, of course. I'm sorry, according to Tosfos, even if she doesn't come back, even if Uriah does not come back, she's divorced. But why was it done in private? Because David did not want people to think that she's available for them. So David HaMelech, therefore, Uriah Hachiti, therefore divorced his wife. Okay. So here comes the question. Again, I'll make it clear. I'm a little tired today. Again, according to Rashi, he gave her a get on condition. Condition is that if my husband doesn't return, I'm divorced as of now. According to Tosfos, he actually gave her a real get. Uriah Hachiti, that is, gave her a real get. Why did he give her a real get? Not David HaMelech. Why did Uriah Hachiti give her a real get? Because he did not want, in private. Why did he give her a real get in private? He didn't want anyone to snatch her. In case he comes back, he didn't want anyone to snatch her.
Why would he give her a real get?
Gave her a get so she shouldn't be an aguna.
Not on
Not on 9.
Why?
Because she shouldn't be an aguna. Why a real get? Because he wanted her to. Why would he give her a real get? And not one on condition. You're asking. Why would he give her a real get? Good question.
Because if he still wanted to come back and.
That's probably why Rashi has a difficult with Tosfos. Why would he give her a real get, not on regular condition? Probably because he would give her a get on condition. Could create issues. Other people might think that she is available. So he wanted her not to be known to the public as being a married woman still. He gave her a full, complete get. If he would give her a get in public, he would not want. He could have given a get in private on condition. You're asking. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Good question. But anyways, the reason why Tosfos chooses that is because it's very difficult to say that David HaMelech would violate the rule of marrying a woman who still might be an Ish. So it must be that he actually gave her a real get. But anyways, they were taunting him about what? About his wife, saying that this woman should not be legally yours. She's not really available for you. She's an Ish, and you still marry her. So what are the words? The exact words? Uvitzali. The word sali also sounds like my side. A woman is created from Chava was created from Adam's side. Uvitzali, my side, my wife. Some Chubanesafu, they gather in groups and they were rejoicing about how they can taunt me and claim that I married someone I wasn't allowed to marry. Karu, they tore at me. Below domo means and no blood came out, meaning below domo means that they taunted me so much that if they would have hurt me, no blood flow would have happened. Because I've lost all my life, even before if they would injure me. Okay. Below, not only that, not only do they taunt me in their spare time, even when they were engrossed in the study of Negoyim and Ohalos, meaning even when they were involved in Torah learning, and the most difficult subject in Torah learning are the laws of skin lesions and Ohalos. Ohalo means an ohel, where a dead body finds itself in. Yeah, Tumas ohel is you're not allowed to be in the same room where there's a corpse, and if you do, you contract that impurity. So these are very, very complex laws. You would think if they're involved in complex laws, they wouldn't have time, their mind would be preoccupied and not have time to taunt King David, David HaMelech. And yet they, nonetheless, at all times, even when they were learning, involved in deep learning, somehow they always found time to embarrass him, insult him. Others say another thing, Negoyim, nega, leprosy, or skin lesion comes from what sin? Lashon hara. So even while they were learning how detrimental Lashon hara was, they still were taunting him. Not only on their spare time. But ani omer lehem, what do I say to them? Misasoy bechenek, that if someone actually violated the laws of marrying, of having relations with a woman who is possibly a still married woman, the worst comes to worst, if she is married, adultery has a death penalty, a very serious death penalty. It's called strangulation. But the yeshlo chelik l'mabah, that person, after he passes away, will get his share in the world to come. But you people, so even if what I did is the worst, and I actually was with a woman who was still married at the time, I will still get an mabah. You won't. The one who shames his fellow in public, as you have embarrassed me, has no share in the world to come, and therefore you're worse off than I am. Now here I have several questions. Here the Gemara says that a person who violates adultery, although executed, does get a chelik mabah. Just a few lines before this, the Gemara said the three people that do not ever leave Gehenna. One of them is a person who commits adultery. We just had that. If you have the page I gave you a couple weeks ago, there it said clearly that one who does this, one of the three people, loses their Olam Haba. That being the case, we have a contradiction between what the Gemara is saying over here. King David is saying that a person who commits adultery doesn't lose his Olam Haba.
Is it because?
So we have a contradiction. Yeah, what's your answer? We have three answers to that question. What's your answer?
It's because it's a suffix, it's a doubt that she's an Ish,
Yeah.
and because it's a doubt whether she was married.
No, but
or
David
not.
HaMelech is talking about even if it wouldn't be a doubt. He's saying, and a person, worst comes to worst, and I did violate, even if it's true what you're accusing me of, even if it is true. So I did commit adultery. It's all in my bar, I still have. But before we learned that if a person commits adultery, you lose your Olam Haba. Huh?
Like, because I'm assuming that there are people in that case where it's complicated to get,
Yeah.
that maybe he didn't know. So he didn't commit.
Well, David knew very well that he was,
No, or maybe like if he thought it was valid and then he was with you and he didn't realize, you know what I mean? Like an accident.
Yeah, but the better answer would be, it sounds like he's I hear what you're saying, but I think it's more like a, all encompassing. He's saying flat statement. But even if worse comes to worse, and it's the worst deal of all, I'm an adulterer, I will still get Olam Haba. I'll be executed, and I'll be And before we said not. So the answer to the question is threefold. The best answer of the three is the answer that I will share with you, and that is, it depends what time you're living. If you're living in a time where there's capital punishment gives you your Olam Haba. The fact you lost your life in this world will give you the merit of having Olam Haba. So David HaMelech says, in King David's time, there was, of course, execution. They had these rules. But the Gemara is referring to nowadays, where we don't have these kind of punishments anymore. So a person who will not be punished in this world will suffer in the world to come if he commits the sin of adultery. In King David's time, you have execution, So like losing your life in this world, you get an Olam Haba in the next world. That's what he was saying. In fact, he emphasized, I will get executed. A person gets executed, that's what the worst that can happen, but the person lives on in the next world at least. Unlike a person who, on a regular basis, taunts people, embarrasses people, makes fun of people, that person will not get Olam Haba under any circumstance. However, I want to throw in that that's only if that person does not do tshuva and ask mechila from those people that he embarrassed. If a person repents, does tshuva, tshuva helps for everything. We're talking about without tshuva. And the same is true, obviously, if a person today committed adultery and did tshuva. So although tshuva would not help from the time we had the Beis Hamikdash, because the judges cannot tell what's going on in your heart, so execution would still be the case. If you did it in front of witnesses, for eyewitnesses that testify that you violated the laws of adultery, then even though a person did tshuva, it would not take away the capital punishment. But nowadays, we don't have capital punishment. Tshuva helps for everything. I don't want you to say, well, I guess we're better off now. It's a whole long story about someone who asked Rabbi Posner from Tennessee. Yeah, they asked the question, how could Torah be so cruel and execute somebody? So he gave an answer, but Rebbe did not like his answer. What was the answer? You know how hard it was to actually put a person to death? First of all, you have to have two witnesses, and they were drilled, interrogated. It was so difficult to remain, to pass a test that the witnesses usually failed. Every little detail, if you missed out one little thing, boom. And you had to have a warning. If you didn't warn the guy, and not only warn him and tell him or her that if you do this, you will get this punishment. If the person said, I hear you, and doesn't say anything more than that, that's not called a warning. The person has to say, I understand what you said, and I'm still going to do it. If the person does not say that, the warning doesn't count. Or if there was a delay between the warning and the actual sin, a delay of a certain amount of time, the person is also exempt. There's so many other conditions that it makes it almost impossible to ever execute someone. So the Rebbe said, that's not an answer. But if all the conditions are met, and they did put people to death once in 70 years maybe, but once in 70 years you can kill somebody? If it's cruel, if it's not, it's immoral, I don't care if it's once in 1,000 years. The Rebbe explained the whole lengthy discussion. I mean, it's a very long talk, and I think it had to do with the Sikha when he spoke about the man landing on the moon in 1969. The Rebbe had a whole hero of what we learned from there. And he also mentioned about capital punishment in that same Sikha, somehow it's connected. And the Rebbe's response was, if you would only know what kind of harm was done in the cosmos, not just in this world, to your neshama and to other people and to the whole Seder Hishtalshalos, you would have said, that's it? You mean just execution is enough? You would think that wouldn't be even enough. But it was built up that it's the punishment, that the sin is so severe, what you actually did is so severe that really no punishment in the world should be enough. The fact that we give the punishment is a chesed from Hashem. So you can't give excuses. Well, it's only once in 70 years. If it's wrong, it's wrong. You have to explain why it's not wrong. And the nekuda of the Rebbe's beer is, and the Rebbe went into a very, very long elaboration of how detrimental a person's sin could be to the entire world, not just to the person himself. Okay. Now, there's another answer. One other answer to this question is, it depends if a baby was born. If there was no baby, no offspring, then you get Olam Haba. But if a baby was born, you brought a mamzer into the world, then that person loses Olam Haba. That's another answer. A third answer is that when the Gemara says that a person who commits adultery loses Olam Haba, it doesn't mean that the person never gets Olam Haba. It means that the person is delayed. His reward in the world to come is delayed at an abnormal amount of time. Usually it's either right away or the maximum amount of 12 months. This person goes beyond the max, but eventually that person will go to Olam Haba. So that's what Dodi Melch was saying. I will eventually, but you'll never get Olam Haba. You're doomed forever. Now, here comes the next piece. Yeah. So Omar Marzutra. Bartuvia Omar Rav. Marzutra says in the name of Rav. The Amrila Omar Rav Chana Bar Bizna Omar Rav Shimon Chasida. Others say it was Rav Chana Bar Bizna who said in the name of Rav Shimon Chasida, and others say it was another name, and others say it was Rabbi Yechanan Mishum Rav Shimon ben Yochai. We just celebrated his historicals yesterday. It is better that a person should cast himself into a fiery furnace than that he should shame his fellow in public. We learned that from Tamar. Literally, it means taken out to be executed. She sent a message to her father-in-law. The pledges that he had left with her, he said, whoever owns those pledges is the person that I am pregnant with. But she refused to shame him in public by naming him as the father of her child. Now, you might want to argue, and who says that it would have helped? Maybe even if she would have shamed him in public, it might not have helped. You could still deny it. But you can't, it's very difficult, especially if you're Yehuda. Are you going to allow your daughter-in-law to be executed? Because you don't want to admit the truth. You're Yehuda, you're not just a guy off the street, you're Yehuda, the sons of Yaakov. Shvatim. So it's quite obvious she knew very well that if she were to shame him in public, it would be obvious. But she refused to do so. She knew that she would be safe for sure. She refused to do so. And if he doesn't admit, but obviously if she would confront him openly, he would not be able to, under any circumstance, deny it. And yet she was willing to give her life away. Now, one more interesting thing here. There's a whole machlokes between the Rambam and Tosfos, Maimonides and Tosfos. Are you allowed to give your life away when Torah says you don't have to? Is it forbidden? I got competition here. Yeah. So the person wants to give their life away when they're not obligated to do so. Is that a sin, or is just not obligated? If a person wants to give his life away and not be Mechal Shabbos, are you allowed to, or are you not allowed to? Is it forbidden? So the Rambam says it's forbidden. If you're not allowed, if you don't have to, it means you're not allowed to. In fact, you're liable to killing yourself, which is a terrible thing. Tosfos learns that it's only that you're not obligated to do so, but if you want to, you can. The Rambam also agrees under certain circumstances, a very special pious person, a tzaddik, is allowed to do it also. You're on a very high madrega. But for the average person, no. Tosfos learns that anybody can do it. Tamar was not obligated to give her life away. There's no chiyuv to give your life away, not to embarrass somebody. So why did you do that? According to the Rambam, she would not be allowed to. But the answer is, before Matan Torah, Tamar did not have a din as a Jew. This is before the Torah was given. Non-Jews have the right, if they want to. They're not obligated to do so under any circumstance. A non-Jew is not obligated to give his life away, even for idolatry, by the way. If a non-Jew is forced to commit idolatry, there were such cases, and they were B'nai Noach, they didn't want to commit idolatry, but under coercion, they were allowed to. Only a Jew is obligated to give his life away. A non-Jew is not allowed to give it, is not obligated to do so. On the other hand, vice versa, a non-Jew is allowed to if they want to. A Jew, according to the Rambam, is not allowed to give his life away for sins that you're not obligated to give your life away. So let me repeat. When it comes to idolatry, a Jew has to give his life away, a non-Jew does not have to. When it comes to other issues where a Jew is not obligated to do so, according to the Rambam, he's not allowed to give his life away. A non-Jew is always allowed to give their life away, but never obligated.
Are they allowed to suicide?
It's not suicide. Okay, now that you mentioned suicide, I want to bring something interesting. The question is, how did Tamar know? We know from Tamar. How did Tamar know this idea of it's so important not to embarrass somebody? Where did she get this from? So the Pnei Yeshua says that she got it from the knowledge that if a person commits suicide, you lose your Olam Haba. If you kill yourself, your death is a sin. If your death itself is a sin, you killed yourself. And that's only if we know for sure that a person did so. It's very easy to disprove suicide. By the way, person who commits suicide does not have shiva. There's no mourning after that person. But a kaddish is recited. There is kaddish and mishnayos and all the good things, yes, but there's shiva, the mourning we don't have. If we know for sure, and it's very, very, in most cases, you don't know for sure. Was she allowed to do what she did? She's committing suicide. And committing suicide is forbidden even for a guy too. So, and it says, and you lose your Olam Haba for that. She knew that rule. So here's how we know that embarrassing somebody in public, you also lose your Olam Haba. Because why did she think it's worthwhile to kill herself? You're committing suicide. You lose your Olam Haba. The answer is, and if I embarrass somebody, I also lose my Olam Haba. I'd rather die this way. I'd rather lose my Olam Haba this way than that way. However, there's no, all the commentators say, the big ones say, we don't find anywhere in the entire Talmud clearly mentioned that a person who commits suicide loses Olam Haba. It's a mysterious, seemingly knowing rule, and no one can find the source for this. But there is a Gemara in Tractate Avodah Zarah, very interesting Gemara, Daf Yud Ches 18a, I think, where there the Gemara discusses a Maisa with Rabbi Chanina ben Trabyon, who visited another stage, and he was openly violating the rules of the government and teaching Torah in public. And there's a death penalty for that. Yitzhak was one of the 10 martyrs, by the way. And the person who was visiting, who was sick, tells him, "Why are you doing this? You're going to lose you're committing suicide because they're going to kill you. You're not allowed to do this." And he said, "Don't worry, Hashem will help. Hashem will help. I'm talking to you logically, you're giving me Hashem will help. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to."
What was it?
He was openly violating, he was, having Torah sessions in public.
Oh,
Private is one thing, but in public, you're going to be found, you're going to be caught. The end was, he was a martyr. In fact, he said, I know for sure that you're going to be killed, I'll Kiddush Hashem with a Sefer Torah around you. That's what happened. They wrapped a Sefer Torah around him and put him on fire. But he had a very slow death. The whole story over there, it's a horrible situation. I mean, it's hard to learn that Gemara. Very, very difficult. So anyway, he asked, now that I've done this, and if I'm going to die, I'll Kiddush Hashem, does that mean will I lose my Olam Haba? Indicating that if a person commits suicide, you lose your Olam Haba. Because if there's no rule that suicide loses Olam Haba, why did he even ask that question? Why should he lose Olam Haba? Why shouldn't he get Olam Haba? Every Jew gets Olam Haba. The fact that he asked that question suggests to us that he knew that suicide is what makes you lose your next world. The question is, will I lose it? So he asked him certain questions, and he came out. He asked him, "Did you have any schusim, any merits?" And he said, "Yeah, one time I was a gabbai tzedakah, and the money of the poor money that I collected for people for the poor got mixed up with my own money. A lot of money I had mixed, and I put all the money and I gave it away for tzedakah because I was afraid maybe I'm mixing some of it's not mine, and I therefore gave everything away." So he said, if that's the case, you're good, you're clear. So from that Gemara, some want to prove that ordinarily, if a person commits suicide, you lose Olam Haba. Another story, a terrible story, is also the story we learned on Tisha B'Av. 400 boys and girls were taken to be violated. The girls really understood where they're going to, and they jumped into the ocean and committed suicide. And there's a baskel that says they will get Olam Haba, because they're anyways going to be, for that purpose, you're allowed to give your life away. It's not called suicide. Indicating that if not for that excuse, but they, saving themselves from being violated, that they would lose their Olam Haba. Otherwise, what's the chiddush? Of course they get, why shouldn't they get? And it says that after the girls did that, the boys also ran in, jumped in. They said, if the girls who were going to be violated through conventional violation, meaning men won, then we, who are going to commit violation and with homosexuality, which is even worse, we for sure should try to prevent that by jumping in, and they did. And there was a pasuk that's quoted in Tehillim, that they will get a very great reward for the world to come, and it's not considered suicide at all, because they're gonna be anyways, gonna be violated. Who knows, they might even be killed too, but they for sure are gonna be violated. And therefore there's no Shaila. But from these two Gemaras, they want to derive that ordinarily suicide you lose Elam Haba. But it's still not clear. It's still vague, and everyone quotes, yeah, but no one knows for sure. Okay, what time is it? Oh wow. Okay, all because I'm very, very tired. I want you to learn the Gemara here in a second, and learn all about Rabbi Akiva and his wife, Rachel. Maybe we'll learn it next week. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and I gotta go to sleep. Oh, I didn't take 10 minutes. Hold on one second. Don't run away.
Go back away, it hasn't really.
Ariel is here?
Yes.
Oh, Michael now. Sarah Maya, Sarah here? No, I know who you are. Sarah Goldenberg?
No.
One second. Iyara?
Here.
Okay. Sofa Gula?
Here.
Anna Sternberg? Shayna Solko with yes. Rachel, yes. Mishka, yes. Yes. Not yes. Maya, yes. Ariel? Is Ariel here? Yeah.